A father from Ohio accused of murdering his 4-month-old daughter and injuring her twin. I have the details of what Andrew Kammerer is accused of doing and what prosecutors claim he told a 911 call taker and detectives. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Andrew Kammerer is a 32-year-old man from Ohio who's accused of murdering one of his 4-month-old twin daughters, Evelyn Kammerer, and causing serious injuries to her twin sister. Andrew Kammerer appeared in court in Clermont County, Ohio, outside of Cincinnati, and he cried. I'll play a little bit of the judge reading the charges against Kammerer here in a bit, along with what the prosecutor and Kammerer's defense attorney had to say. Kammerer faces a number of charges, including aggravated murder, felonious assault, and endangering children. The details alleged in this case are so disturbing and heartbreaking. I want to warn you of that. These were babies. They were so little. They were born on July 5th. And from the photos I've seen, they were absolutely adorable. On Monday, November 4th, Andrew Kammerer called 911 from his home in Goshen Township, Ohio. It's a suburb outside of Cincinnati. Court documents say that Kammerer claimed his daughter, Evelyn, was having trouble breathing from a fall. The documents state, while en route, officers were updated that Evelyn was no longer breathing. Goshen Township EMS transported Evelyn to Bethesda North Hospital. Evelyn was later transported to Cincinnati Children's Hospital and placed on life support. An MRI showed a substantial amount of hemorrhaging around Evelyn's brain. During a recorded interview at the hospital with GTPD detectives, Andrew Kammerer stated he was changing Evelyn's diaper when she fell from a changing table. Andrew advised he picked up Evelyn, who was face down on the floor, and called 911. Tragically, baby Evelyn died that evening after 10 p.m. The next day, the coroner's office conducted an autopsy. The complaint says the following was found during the autopsy: significant internal trauma to the brain, spinal column, and liver. The injuries found during the autopsy were inconsistent with an accidental fall and were non-accidental. As a result of Andrew Kammerer's statements and the autopsy results, he was arrested and charged with aggravated murder, felonious assault, and endangering children. If this case weren't tragic enough, there's more, as I mentioned earlier. Evelyn's twin sister, according to police and prosecutors, had also been injured. She was examined after Evelyn's injuries were discovered. A complaint charging Kammerer with felonious assault states, an examination was conducted on the sibling whose name is redacted. During the examination, 4 broken ribs healing, which were non-accidental, were discovered. So Evelyn's twin sister, according to investigators, had previously suffered 4 broken ribs. Andrew Kammerer was arrested and a grand jury has now indicted him. He cried during his arraignment.
Mr. Kammerer, because of the serious nature, everything here is serious, the more serious nature, I want to go over with you in open court with your attorney and the prosecutors what the possible penalties are so that we have a record of that, okay? And when I'm done, you're going to have to say you understand. And then I'm going to ask the parties if I've said that correctly, because sometimes they're hard to navigate. All right, count one is aggravated murder. It's an unclassified felony. It's a violation of 2903.01C. And if convicted, the possible penalties, Mr. Kammerer, are life with possibility of parole after 20 years, life with possibility of parole after 25 years, life with possibility of parole after 30 years, and life without parole, up to a $25,000 fine. Do you understand that? Okay.
I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's Law&Crime YouTube takeover. It is Upside. Upside is a great free app that will give you cash back on gas and groceries. The other day, I used Upside when I went to Dunkin' Donuts for a tea. I claimed an offer for Dunkin' on the app and paid as usual using a card and followed the steps on the app, and I got cash back. It's really, really easy. You can use Upside at places like Shell, Exxon Mobil, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell, Chipotle, And that is just to name a few. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on your screen and use our promo code LC Takeover and get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's promo code LC Takeover for extra cash back. In the state of Ohio, aggravated murder is the most serious charge a person can face. That charge can mean a murder was premeditated, another felony was being committed at the time, or when the victim was under the age of 13. Kammerer is also charged with murder in Evelyn's death. He cried as Judge Victor Haddad read the penalty, which is a life sentence if convicted. Parole eligibility comes after serving 15 years on that charge. Judge Haddad then read the charge for Evelyn's twin sister's injuries, the 4 broken ribs. That charge is felonious assault.
All right. Count 5 is felonious assault. And that's a felony of the second degree, Mr. Kammerer, a violation of 2903-11A. And in Ohio, as a felony of the second degree, it carries, if convicted, a potential minimum sentence of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 8 years in prison, with a maximum sentence. Now stay with me, Mr. Kammerer, because it gets complicated, of 50% more of the minimum sentence. So, for instance, if you were convicted and you were given 8 years in prison as the minimum sentence, the maximum sentence would be 50% of that. Add that on to 8 would be 4, it would be 12. Does that make sense? That's right. On the other end, if you were given a 2-year sentence, that would be the minimum sentence. The maximum sentence, would you add 1 to that, half of 2, the maximum sentence would be 3. You understand that? All right.
And Kammerer finally is also charged with endangering children.
Count 6 is endangering children. That's a felony of the second degree. That carries a presumption for prison of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 8 years in prison, up to a $15,000 fine. But like count 5, Mr. Kammerer, it carries that minimum sentence and a maximum sentence.
The long and short of it, Andrew Kammerer, if convicted, could spend the rest of his life in prison for murdering Evelyn, his baby daughter, and injuring his second daughter, Evelyn's twin.
Guilty pleas are entered.
The prosecutor then explained Evelyn's injuries. She elaborated a little more on what I told you earlier as she asked that he be held on a $5 million bond.
During the call, he stated that the infant had fallen from a changing table and also noted other injuries on the 4-month-old that he could not explain. The child was transported to Bethesda North Hospital and subsequently to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. While en route to Cincinnati Children's, EK went into cardiac arrest. Once at Cincinnati Children's, through various imaging staff at the hospital discovered that EK was suffering from a horrific brain injury, which was deemed to be incompatible with life. EK passed away later in the day on the 4th. While at the hospital, detectives with Goshen Township Police Department responded and had contact with the defendant as well as the children's mother. The detectives learned that at the time of the injuries occurred and were inflicted upon EK, the defendant was the sole caregiver of both EK and her twin sister, DK. The defendant also made concerning statements to law enforcement and medical staff, such as, "I don't know my own strength." While at the hospital, law enforcement requested medical personnel check the twin, DK, check out her well-being as well. And during that checkup, medical staff determined that DK had suffered several rib fractures, which were in a stage of healing by that time.
So you heard Assistant Prosecutor Laura Barron Allen say that Andrew Kammerer made statements that he doesn't know his own strength while he was at the hospital. And there was more that the prosecutor revealed about Evelyn's injuries.
It was discovered that EK had been subjected to an extraordinarily violent attack, which caused injuries in addition to the brain injury previously mentioned, such as retinal and optic nerve hemorrhages, hemorrhaging of the larynx and trachea, anterior and posterior rib fractures with hemorrhaging, a liver laceration which resulted in significant internal bleeding, and subdural and epidural hemorrhaging of the spinal cord. Law enforcement also conducted a search of the defendant's residence and located various items of evidence, including a door which the defendant had punched several holes through, illustrating his anger issue.
So the injuries, according to the prosecutor, were worse than initially described in court documents.
Additionally, based on the allegations, Your Honor, this was not a single incident. This was a pattern of abuse perpetrated by the defendant upon 2 babies. And the defendant's violence escalated over time, ultimately leading to the death of EK. Due to the defendant's clear issues with anger and his complete lack of concern for human life, the state is requesting a $5 million cash professional bond. We would ask that any bond posted be conditioned on no contact with DK or any other minor child.
All right, thank you, Ms. Beard.
Kammerer's lawyer asked the judge to set bail lower than $5 million, saying that he could stay with his parents.
I ask that the court not increase the bond based on the number of charges, but if anything, perhaps consider the multiple charges as evidence that perhaps this was not a purposeful act. Regarding the act itself, in count 1 in the murder, to my knowledge, there's no eyewitnesses. There's no video showing anything of aggression or aggravating occurring. There's no confession. What we do have is this young man at 33 years of age calling the 911 to complain and request medical assistance for his daughter. He has no prior felony record. He has no prior criminal record. He has no prior offenses of violence of any type. He does have a prior traffic matter for which he was placed on community control, and he successfully completed that, which I think shows his basic good character.
The court is going to set bond at $5 million. Surety, no contact with DK or any other child under 18. Reside with your father, no contact with DR. Return to court, abide by all laws, no alcohol, marijuana, or illegal drugs, no over-the-counter drugs with pseudoephedrine, take medications as prescribed, keep probation advised of the current address and phone number, and if bond's posted, it's a reporting bond, and you have to report to probation, Mr. Kammerer, in this building. And I'll just end this with, that's the number I had in mind even before the prosecutor made the recommendation, just so the record's clear. All right, anything else, Mr. Rath?
No, Your Honor.
Anything from the state?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kammerer.
It's not clear at this point whether Andrew Kammerer, with the help of his family, will be able to post that amount of bail. That's a lot of money, $5 million. Kammerer is being held at the Clermont County Jail and will be back in court later this month. That's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.